Hi and welcome to the latest edition of the Leadership Lab series. I'm your host Adam Harris, and today I'm joined by Sam Bennett, Councillor, but that's where we just need to start because there's so much more. So let's start with the aspect of you being a councillor. How did you get into it?
Oh, how did I get into being a councillor? I've always had the aspiration to lead my community as a community leader in local body politics. So for me, it was kind of a natural progression as I worked through varying leadership roles to ultimately end up as a councillor, which I was successful in my running in 2019 to be blessed by our community to serve in the role of councillor, which I suppose that word means a lot. You know, when you think about being a councillor, you are a part of a governance team of 15 here at the New Plymouth District Council that manage and govern a $3.5 billion business. So the word councillor, there's a lot of responsibility that comes just with that terminology. Yeah.
So when you think about being a councillor, from what you know now compared to what you knew in 2019, what's the one or two things that you'd advise yourself back at that point?
Oh, look, I think when I went into council and looked at my campaign to be a councillor, I went in with my eyes wide open. I'd done a lot of research as I went to the community and asked their permission to be elected. And I think that set me up well. So now that I've been in this term, and we're just about coming to the end of this term for elections in October this year, in 2022, the things that I've learned is that this job that we do as a councillor, it is complex, it is demanding, it is unrelenting, and it is brutal. And all of those four things I have learnt to manage. And I suppose I'm lucky as a leader that I like all of those things. And I think, you know, my advice to anybody putting their hand up to be elected to go into council, you know, be careful what you wish for, because it is a big job. And what I've learned is that those people that want to serve our community as a councillor, it is definitely not financially driven. It is all about putting your community first. So, you know, self and service come really closely together when you want to lead as a councillor.
So 2019 to now, there would have been some challenges anyway, but obviously you've had to navigate the whole kind of COVID situation. I'm interested, would you share some of, from a wider perspective, some of the leadership challenges that you've had as a group, but also maybe specifically some of the things that you've had to navigate?
Oh, look, I think when we look at, let's say, the pandemic, what we didn't know, Adam, in 2019 was that we were going to have to navigate a global pandemic in our term, and in my particular case, in my first term. So when that came along, that changed the face of our governance and about how are we going to navigate managing our business and also looking after our people. So there were two really important aspects that we needed to do. And you know, all I can do is one, congratulate our CEO and the operations team for managing through a very, very difficult process. And what the community probably don't realise, that when we were dealing with and putting safety aspects to keep us all safe, those decisions were purely operational decisions and not from a governance team. So that got a little bit frustrating for me. I didn't have a lot of say around how do we manage our community, because it's really important in your role that you know your governance role and your operational role. So for me, I try to keep that a very clearly defined line. So relying on the government of the day and liaising with them about what's appropriate for our community. So we know that we had some challenges when our CEO had the mandates here in our community for our assets, our New Plymouth District Council assets. 95% of the community realised that we needed to do that to keep us safe, and we had a small sector of our community that didn't take that on board so well. But those are the decisions that we have to stick with, and I totally supported our council and what they needed to do. And I think when we look back in time, we'll look back in time at a piece of sand on the beach. That's all it was in that
Yeah.
moment of time. And I think our council should be very proud of what they've done to keep our community safe and the assets that we own. And I think we've got a responsibility to do that.
And the challenges that you personally had to kind of go through during this period?
Oh, look, I think it was the same for our team. When you come into council, we have to make some pretty big financial decisions. So when COVID came along, we couldn't meet like that. And those people that know me, they'll know that I'm a very face-to-face person. I'm personable, and I like to look people in the eye if we're going to have a discussion or a debate.
Yeah.
And that got taken away with us, so we had to then go onto the Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
However, at that point in time, we couldn't make financial decisions online, on Zoom. So it went to Parliament. They had to put some legislation through pretty quickly that allowed us to go online on Zoom to make financial decisions. That was a bit tricky to navigate for a while. And I suppose just the new way of dealing when you're not sitting in a chamber with your colleagues,
Yeah.
and having to go online, make really important decisions online is a lot different than sitting personally in a room where you can talk to your colleagues. You've got the community, the public are there, and that feel was all taken away. So it was a bit surreal for a while. Yeah, but I think when I look back, we managed that pretty well, and we've got through that now.
Yeah.
And I think that when we look back in time, the lessons that we've learned, that we can actually do things in a different way but achieve the same outcomes. And the pandemic's taught us to do that, to be resilient, to think outside the box and still get our mahi done, which the community expect that we're going to be doing.
So one of the things about having a council is that there's everybody's elected and there's some differing views and opinions.
Yes.
How do you navigate that challenge when somebody categorically disagrees with something that you really strongly believe in?
Yeah, and I suppose when you come into a councillor role, it's different from any other governance role that I've ever had. You end up sitting around a table with 14 councillors and the Mayor of the day, elected from your community. And it's one of the few times in my life where I didn't get to choose the team, Adam. Where the team is selected for you. It's elected by the representatives of the community, and you end up with these wonderful people sitting around the table, all with their own agendas that they bring to the table, because the community need to realise that we're in a political environment. This is what makes it different from any other governance team that I've sat on, because every one of us come with agendas. And I suppose what I've learned in my leadership journey in council is having the ability to take all of those agendas and then collectively put those agendas together to make the very best decisions for our community as a collective. And I think that's a big skill in leadership when you're looking in a council environment, in a political environment. Yeah, so I think that's really challenging for people, and it's the ability to listen with intent and not respond. And I think that's a real skill for leadership in this environment. And a lot of the time, you'll hear people, different councillors, on their agendas, speaking very passionately about things. And it is important to listen to what they're saying before responding. And I've learned that this last 3 years, to listen with intent before responding. I think that's an important skill to have.
So you had your judgment was in play previously, and you've had to learn from being in that situation consistently has really challenged the thought process.
Oh, of course, and this is a little bit different now, because, as I say, in a political environment, yes, you come with an agenda, but you must listen to everybody's perspective before you sit down, you debate, and you make a decision that best suits the community. And so that is a real skill to have, and one that I believe I have now, which is good.
I'm here with Sam Bennett, Councillor. Councillor Bennett, there's been some challenges that you've faced recently with the aspect of the code of conduct charge and investigation that kind of happened. I'd love for you to kind of share A, what it was all about, B, what it meant for for you and your peers, and what you learned from that individually as a leader.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Look, I think the community are well aware that I had some allegations targeted at me, and what I understand now is that in my community there will always be individuals and organisations that target you and your character. But what I've learned, and I already knew this, is that when you do get allegations, and in this particular case vexatious allegations targeted at you, I am fiercely will defend my character. And so when we were going through the process of the code, there were times when I didn't think, and this is only my view, where the process of the code of conduct wasn't where it needed to be, and I challenged that. And I suppose as an individual, to challenge a council, a $3.5 billion business as an individual, and successfully come out the other side of that, and that success looked like that council actually made a decision as a group of people to kick it to touch. So for me, that was a clear indicator that actually we probably didn't get this right, and we need to look at those processes. The really positive outcome from this whole allegation and process was that the New Plymouth District Council, at the end of the day, adopted a new code in line with local government New Zealand that is widely used throughout Aotearoa New Zealand. And for me, I think that was a good outcome. For me, that particular code of conduct policy now, for me, is much more robust. So the learning was not only from me, but also from a council's point of view, that as individuals, it's okay to challenge your council. And, people have got to understand, I don't work for council, I work with council and for the people. So this is the role of governance, and I'll never apologise for defending my character. But when all is said and done, we have a new code, one that I'd be happy to work with moving forward, which has already been now adopted in place.
Well, what did you learn about yourself through that process? Because, it must have been a tough period for you.
Oh, look, it was a difficult period of time. I suppose nobody likes to have the finger pointed at them. And, you being brought under the spotlight. Generally, I'd love that. But at the end of the day, we know that there are elements of the community that will target you as individuals to try and discredit you. And so I learned that I already knew I was resilient. I knew that I would defend my character. And that's what people have got to realise. I'm pretty tough. And so, if people want to have a go, they're more than welcome. And I suppose at the end of the day, it was a long process, an unnecessary process, but we've all learned something from it. And now let's put that aside. We need to move on. My focus has always been and always will be to focus on the issues of the community, the issues of council, and not personalities. That's not my genre. I'm very focused issue now as we move forward, because we've got some big issues to deal with. And
such as?
Oh, we've got some big ones, right? So I think one top of the tree would be the Three Waters reform. So there's some debate around that and where we need to go with that. The community will be aware that I'm not particularly aligned as an individual where our council is going with that. So I have a different view, and that will come out shortly as we lead up to the October elections. But I don't think the whole country's actually happy or quite clear on where we're going with Three Waters at the moment. So there is much water to pass under that bridge as we navigate that way through.
So let's talk about the elections later this year, because you've put your hat in the ring to go for mayor.
Yeah, and it's always been an aspiration of mine to lead the district as its mayor. I see the mayoral role just as a natural progression for me. Like, ever since I've been 18 managing my parents' dairy farms out at Rahutu at South Taranaki, I've always been in leadership roles. And so to put your hand up, to stand as the mayor, which I kind of see as the preeminent leader in our district, is just a natural progression for me. But it doesn't come by chance. This is not just something that I thought, it'd be nice to be the mayor one day. This has been in my thought patterns for a long time. And so I suppose the first part of that realisation was getting onto council, being in council as a councillor, understanding process, how does council tick, then at the right time put your hand up and say, actually I think I would like to lead our team into the future, and that's why I'm putting my hand up. It's just a natural progression for me, and one that I'm focused on and very excited about.
So why is now the right time for you?
Oh, I think the right time for me now comes down to one key thing. When I look at whether it's your current mayor or those that are putting their hand up to stand, you've got to have your points of difference. And so what I have learned over many years is that cultural competency is now key. It is going to be a key leadership skill to navigate us through some very difficult times. So as a council, as an individual, we need to build our cultural competency, because whether we like it or not, we have a constitution in this country, Te Tiriti of Wātangi, and we have a responsibility to honour that treaty, to work with and in the Te Ao Māori world as partners. And I think from my perspective, we're lacking that at the moment. We're lacking cultural competency and the maturity to do that, because we have some tough mahi moving forward. And we will need to learn to work in the Te Ao Māori world seamlessly. This is the first election where this council, in the history of this council, have a Māori ward as part of our representation. Extremely proud that we welcome our Māori representative to our table, our decision-making table, and we will need strong leadership to bring all of those elements together to get the best outcome for our community moving forward. So that's where I see my point of difference, cultural competency. And people ask me, well, where do you get your competency from when we talk about cultural competency? So for me, one of my mentors is Meng Foon, the Human Rights Commissioner and Race Relations Commissioner for Aotearoa, New Zealand. Huge amount of respect for Meng. He is my mentor. I look at everything that he does about how he navigates these difficult times and how we work together around race relations. And so for me, I do spend some time with Meng. I can ring him anytime. He's just visited Ngāmutu here in New Plymouth of recent times. And he's an inspiration. And I think you need people that you look to that inspire you. And Meng is mine. And quite often people ask me, if you weren't going to be mayor, what would be your ideal job? My ideal job would be to be the next Race Relations Commissioner for New Zealand, for Aotearoa. I would love to do that job, and it's people like Meng Foon that inspire me to be there. But cultural competency is built over time, and even now we're seeing the Te Ao Māori come into our school networks. So I think over time people will become more familiar about how we need to work together with the Crown and Maori together for better decision making. And that's a real challenge for our community at the moment. But I'm the person that I think that we can do that together and get good outcomes for our community.
So if you're successful in becoming mayor,
yes,
is there one or two things you'd do differently?
Only one or two?
Give us the top one or two.
Oh look, I don't know about differently. I think there's some really key things around my own management style that I would do differently. So like my leadership style is transformational. So I've always been a person that understands vision and knowing how to realise that vision. My strength has always been identifying really good people to realise the vision. Because as a leader, it's not about you doing everything. It's about knowing who your good people are, knowing how to identify skill sets to reach the vision. And I'm very much a pragmatic visionary. So I understand our long-term plan up until 2031. And I was one of the 14 councillors, including our mayor, that put a 10-year plan together in the next 10 years, which I think is absolutely amazing. And as a team, we should be very proud of that. But it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of vision to get to that point where we can actualise that plan. So I'm absolutely looking forward to that. I've got some probably some thoughts around our committee structure where I think we can streamline and do things a little bit more in a streamlined manner, because we already have a busy job, and I think sometimes we make work for work's sake, and I don't want to do that.
Hi, Adam here. I'm here with Sam Bennett, Councillor. Sam, we were talking earlier, and I was going to ask you about mentors, coaches that you've had over the years, and you mentioned Ming. Interested to know how that came about and what you've taken from that relationship.
That's a really good question. I think when I was coming into council, so thinking about campaigning prior to 2019, understanding where Ming had come from around being the Mayor of Gisborne for many, many years, inspiring me not only as a mayor, but then he going into the role of the Race Relations Commissioner for New Zealand through the human rights. And that's when I kind of just picked up the phone and rang him. And he's the sort of guy that you can do that.
Yep.
You know, he's so relatable. You know, hi Meg, it's Sam here, I'm down here in New Plymouth, and I suppose that was done purposefully as we navigated our way to the establishment of the Māori ward here in New Plymouth, which we know was divisive. You know, we were dealing with discriminatory law that was in place at that time, and so we had to navigate through that. And I know that our council, you know, 12 out of 15 councillors supported the establishment of a Māori ward, and that might seem an easy statement to say, but there was a lot that sat behind that. That decision on that day changed the course of our history here in our council, which is close to 100 years old. It has changed the history and the way forward about how we represent our community, not only here in this country, but indeed globally. So Ming was the guy that I could ring and say, you know, can I sound you out? This is what I'm thinking, and getting some really good feedback with Ming. And Ming's the sort of guy that if you're not on the right track, he will tell you.
So let me just pick up, because the cultural competency piece is really key for you.
Yes, very much so.
You're a passionate guy anyway, but I really sense and feel the passion that you've got. Why is it so important for you?
Oh, look, I think it's important because, you know, we're living in times of change, of times of divisiveness in this country. And a lot of it sits around the relationship between the Crown and Māori as partners, as we work together. And so, depending on your view of the Treaty of Waitangi, Te Tiriti of Waitangi, and its application as our constitution in the country about how we make decisions, everybody's got a view. So I have a very firm view on how I see Te Tiriti of Waitangi, which in my view is the treaty that is approved under international law, not the Treaty of Waitangi, Te Tiriti, as my go-to document. I've done a lot of work, a lot of self-study to understand how to apply the principles of Te Tiriti in our community for decision making. So for me, I don't see it as much of a challenge now, but it is still for a lot of people. Understanding that relationship. How do we bring our Crown and Māori together as partners to make decisions? And that's difficult for people. So to make those decisions, we need to have a level of cultural competency and maturity to make those decisions. And that's where I see my advantage now, being through some pretty tough times. When I made the decision to move on that day to establish a Māori ward that was supported by my colleagues, the community did not see what happened to me after that. The abuse that I got walking down the street, the phone calls and the emails. But you know what? All it did was reinforce that I made the right decision and that I can be resilient. And when I make a decision, I will stick by it, thick or thin. But I know that when I look back in history now, when I look back in time, I, along with those other 12 councillors, will be on the right side of history. And that's why now the moment to put your hand up and say, I want to lead this district, is the right time. We have 3 waters reforms coming up, where people are talking about co-governance. What does that mean? The Resource Management Act, local government. We have these big reforms that all involve a cultural competency to do this with Māori.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be mature to do that, and I don't think we have that level of maturity currently in our leadership, and I think I'm the person to lead our way.
Let's take you back then. As you reflect on your life, how far back can you see when you can identify and go, actually, I was a leader at that point?
Oh, so way back when well, it starts at school, I suppose. You know, I went to the amazing Francis Douglas College here in New Plymouth for 6 years. Was the head boy? Not. What I was good was at sport. I should have paid more attention to mathematics. But anyway, even through school, I was always in those leadership roles. But leaving school as a young man, at 18 years old, going home and managing my parents' dairy farms at 18 years old. These are multi-million-dollar farms, and then being married soon after. So, I've been married since I was very young, 19, to my beautiful wife Donna for the last 37 years. And so that's where it started, right back as a young age, and it comes from your parents. It comes from the mana of my mother and father that knew how to work. These are working class farmers that taught me how to work, that taught me my ethic about working. And as I went through life, I got to 19, joined the New Zealand Fire Service, which is now a FENS, and I was there for 27 years. So I'm a gold star holder with the Fire Service, which is recognising 25 years service or more, which I'm extremely proud of. I did time in Ottawa, Canada as a firefighter emergency medical technician in Canada, and then came back here. And at that point in time, I wanted to extend my leadership. So I'd done my time in the Fire Service. My leadership there was limited for me. So I had the opportunity to be the training manager for a place called M&O, which was a training organisation within the oil and gas industry. So again, that was like second in charge in that organisation.
Yeah.
And then I had a aspiration always to be a vocational celebrant. So in 2009, I went and did my diploma in celebrant studies, which I am to this day, a vocational funeral celebrant and a marriage celebrant. And that is the work that I love. It gets me up every day and informs who I am. So I've been doing a lot of celebrant work since 2009. I also have my Speaking Made Easy business, which I developed, which is around just providing confidence for people around public speaking and presentation skills. And so they've always been leadership roles. And then ultimately looking at that leadership and going, okay, am I ready to step up to be a councillor, to lead this community now? And that's why in 2009 I said it's the right time. And now looking at that next level of leadership as the mayor is a different level. But I'm ready. I've done the work. I know where we're going, and I know how to get there and have the skills to take this community with us, which is really important.
So there's this aspect of really wanting to kind of serve, but also be in front of people. You say that when you're doing your celebrant work, that keeps you on fire. What is it about doing that work that really gets you?
Oh, look, I think particularly around funeral work for me is deeply personal. Deeply personal when you get families come to you that have had a person pass, everything from a stillborn baby to somebody that's 109, or these days, unfortunately, suicide-related death. So when those people come to you to reach out to say, can we come into your care? Can you develop and deliver a celebration for our loved one? That is an amazing honour, and one that I take deeply because in that moment in time when you're part of their family, you're on a journey of celebration, and sometimes that can be very difficult for families. So that's where my relatability comes in, my keen listening skills to pick up people what they're saying and then reflect that in a service. That is an art that is deeply personal.
And I remember you showing me with me at a previous time the amount of effort and energy you go into. It's not just a case of turning up. There's a lot of preparation.
Oh, 100%.
When you reflect over the years, apart from Ming, who else has been a really real influence on your leadership journey?
Yeah, I've got a couple in mind, I think. The first one that I'd like to mention is a guy called Willie Wood. So Willie Wood is the unofficial mayor of Ormata, just out here on Beach Road. So Willie was my boss in the fire service for some 20 years. And he was the old style boss. But what I learned from Willie, and I just went out and saw him the other day, I actually asked for his blessing to run for mayor. And I said to him, Willie, I'd like to run for mayor. What do you think? He goes, what are you waiting for? So, because I wanted his blessing.
Mm-hmm.
And
why? Why was it important to you?
Because I'd seen what Willie had taught me over the years in the fire service was how to work, how to get people to achieve an outcome and get the work done.
Mm-hmm.
And he was so good at relating to people to get things done. And I've always learnt that from Willie about how do you relate to people? How do you talk them to get them to do something?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he taught me. And that's why, it was only a couple of weeks ago, I went out and saw him, we had a cup of tea and a biscuit and asked his blessing. I said, what do you think? He goes, I think you should do that, Sam. And Willie's probably 80 odd now, 85, 86.
Mm-hmm.
And the other person is a really well-known person around here, Julie Beck, who is the one of the managers now at Allbrew, Marzagam and McEwen. Julie is the one that took me away from my fire service career and come and said to me, hey look, I think you would enjoy working for me at M&O, and Julie was the big cheese at M&O at that point in time, and Julie taught me a lot of things that I didn't know on my leadership journey. So I'd come out of a fire service leadership autocratic role.
Mm-hmm.
Do this, do now. House is on fire, go in now. So that was my thought pattern. So what Julie did for me was said, now you're in the business world and this is how we work. So I have to thank Julie Beck for providing me with my foundational business skills, of my business acumen,
mm-hmm.
To employ staff, to look after them, to manage their contracts. All of that sort of stuff was quite new to me before that.
Yeah.
So I have to thank Julie for that, because she's the reason, along with Willie, why I'm sitting here today.
Is there any resources that you go to? So have you got a favourite book or a podcast or any particular people that you're always looking for their inspiration?
Yeah, I think, apart from the people that I've already mentioned, so Willie and Julie, I can just go and talk to.
Yep.
Meng, always talking to, checking in. But, when you look at material, there's so much material around these days, but I think I've read every book there ever has about every mayor in the world. And I think it's important, like I've looked back over time in the New Plymouth District Council, way back to Denny Sutherland when I was a child,
mm-hmm.
and looked at all of their histories and studied each mayor and what was good about them, what did they do well, what wasn't so good,
mm-hmm.
how can I improve on the generations to come. And so that's where my inspirations come about. When we look back, we can only move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done my research on my mayors that have been before me.
Any common themes that come out from that research?
A deep love for our community.
Okay.
100%. You can't be a councillor or a mayor if you do not care deeply for this community. Because why would you?
Mm-hmm.
If you are there for ego, you're in the wrong job. It's got to be service before self.
Yep.
Every time. And so, if people are thinking about coming on the council because it's an ego thing, or you're going to make lots of money, you are in the wrong space.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's always about serving your community before yourself. And that's kind of where I come from. Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting. Yeah.
Last question, what's the one thing that we don't know about you that we should know about you?
One thing that you don't know about me? That's a good question. What people don't know about me is my operatic background. So some people will know that I am the current sponsorship manager for Matilda,
Yep.
which is currently on from the 7th to the 23rd of July.
Where can people buy tickets?
Oh, they can get them at Ticketek, which is good. But I think from my operatic background,
Yeah.
like I'm not the best singer and dancer in the world, but what people probably don't know about me is I have a deep love for operatic. They are my family when I'm not doing other stuff like politics. And I think it's around, when I look back at my career, and I think about myself as championing the community. I've always done voluntary work, and it's really important that you find what you love and you support it, and operating is that for me. I just love going down there. I'm probably better getting money off people than being on stage. However, if you didn't know, I was Father Alex in our production of Mamma Mia a few years ago. So I did make the stage, and I am going to Mamma Mia in Hawara tonight to watch our friends down in South Taranaki. So that's a little bit about me, but can I end on a quote?
Of course you can.
When I sat down with Meng, and he was just recently down here in Namutu, New Plymouth, talking to us, he said, Sam, I've got some advice for you. I said, what's that? He goes, all things can be sorted over a cup of tea and a biscuit. And I will always remember that. And he is right. If we sit down and we talk, have that koreo, all solutions come from a cup of tea and a biscuit. Great advice.
Sam, thank you very much for sharing your insights, where you're at and what you're looking to do in the future. My name's Adam Harris. This is the Leadership Lab series. Till next time.